All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us for this month's speaker series. We're very excited to have you all with us in this August 2026. We are very excited to be welcoming Mark Medeiros of the Peninsula Open Space Trust to speak with us tonight. I've gotten the opportunity to work with Mark in his role as someone who handles a lot of posts outreach. He is attending festivals, bird walks, bio blitzes. So he has a lot of personal experience exploring areas of post as well as working closely with this awesome organization. He is a local to our wonderful county. And if any of you are from the downtown area and are familiar with Veggielution, Mark is one of the awesome humans that's responsible for that great organization in our city as well. So this evening, Mark's going to be speaking to us about his work at Post, the work that Post does in our county and the greater San Francisco Bay Area, and the sort of conservation work that is made possible by their existence as a public nonprofit land trust. So thank you all so much for joining us. I'm going to be turning it over to Mark tonight. Mark, would you like questions to be peppered in throughout, or would you like us to hold questions till the end?
I'm very flexible. I don't know if I'm actually gonna see chat as I'm talking.
Yeah,
So I'm happy to pause here and there. And if there's a question or two that feels like related or relevant to like what we're going over right then, I'll happily take questions as I go.
right. I
And
can mind the chat for you.
Okay,
So,
sweet. Yeah. Super happy to do that. And if I'm gonna answer it later and I know that, then I might be like, okay, just hold on that. But I like a kind of conversational style, so I'm open to that for sure. Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah.
Great. So, folks, drop your questions in the chat and we will address them as we go through. All right, Mark, take it away.
Okay. Well, first off, let me get my slides up for you all. Let's see here. Well, here we go. Now I'm going to share my screen. And Carolyn, you were saying maybe I should address what's my favorite preserve.
Yeah, I mean, so many of us have our own favorite birding spots, hiking spots. Um, do you have a favorite preserve?
Sure, yeah. Well, before I start, yeah, thank you all for listening to me. I'm privileged to be here with you all, and I love what the Santa Clara Valley Bird Alliance does and um, what you all do as nature enthusiasts and bird advocates and nature advocates. I grew up in San Martin, which is between Morgan Hill and Gilroy. Born and raised here and have never left. And my favorite place to go whenever I have time is Harvey Bear Ranch. How many of y'all know Harvey Bear Ranch? Hopefully you do. I remember when I was a kid, it was not yet a county park. I don't know if it had already been acquired or not, but I grew up right next to it. And I remember even as a little child, like wondering if it was still going to be there when I grew up. And now it's a public county park. And I am just so thankful for that, you know? And it really relates to, what I do now at Post as part of Peninsula Open Space Trust protecting land and getting people involved. So Harvey Bear Ranch, pretty cool.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I did a couple camping trips there when I was a kid with my
Oh,
parents.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, Coyote Lake's so cool. So much wildlife.
it really
Like
is.
very dense. Like I feel like I see way more wildlife there than anywhere else. So
Yeah. All
yeah.
right. So as we're diving into it, we did get one question where Ron was wondering, where's your background photo taken?
Oh yeah. Shoot. Let me get back here. I am unsure right now. Where is this from? I don't know. I want to say it's
Looks
on the
kind of,
west side of the valley. Yeah, it
hmm,
looks kind of like, I mean, it does I chose it because it kind of looks to me like my favorite landscape, which is the oak woodlands and kind of like Diablo-esque, but I am actually
yeah.
kind of thinking it's maybe up on the peninsula or somewhere in the South Bay on the
Yeah.
west side.
Yeah, that
Looking
fog is
north.
looking awful thick.
Yeah, yeah. So I couldn't tell you actually, but I like it. So thanks for the question, Ron. So you guys see my slides okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. So as I said, I'm Mark Medeiros. I'm the Director of Community Engagement. I've been at Post for 11 years now, so I've seen a lot of change. Um, and I'm just sharing this picture here because I am just so honored and privileged that we get to work together. This is from one of our joint birding events, meant to get kind of new people. This event was Queers of a Feather, focused on LGBTQ community, and we've done some other types of events together as well. And we're doing one this weekend. It's kind of a birding for all, beginner-friendly birding style event. So I'm just acknowledging that, we are partner organizations and we work together in tandem to get people involved in conservation and get people enjoying nature. So I love you guys. Thank you all for what you do. Um, so I'm gonna kind of walk you through everything about Post today, and I'm gonna share a bunch of project examples. I'm gonna start with our mission and a little bit of our history. What do we do? Lots of project examples related to some of our key program areas. Um, and then, of course, getting involved. Um, I'm sure you all do this regularly, but I like to pause and always reflect on the fact that the area where we live has been inhabited by people for 10,000 plus years. The estimates keep going up and up and up in terms of the thousands of years that people have been here. And I'm so amazed that in our small area, there are multiple languages spoken: Ramaytush, Chochenyo, Tamian, Awaswas, Mutsun, um, some of the languages in the Bay Area, and increasingly figuring out how we can partner with our native communities is a big focus for Post. It's a complicated topic, which I'm not going to go into in depth, but um, I think we all appreciate like the level of depth of knowledge and care that the first people have put into the landscape since time immemorial, and the reason that they are the reason we have the biodiversity that we have today. And so now, as residents of this place, um, this is just a collection of pictures from our community, community groups, volunteers, farmers. So many different people live here. We're all here together now, and it's our collective opportunity to take care of the place together, which is what we're doing at both of our organizations. So, what a privilege it is that we get to do this. So, Post basics, and I'm just acknowledging that you guys are like the super duper conservationists and super duper involved people. So you probably know some of this basic information, but I'm just going to go over it for you. Post protects open space on the peninsula and in the South Bay for the benefit of all. Our name is Peninsula Open Space Trust. It's getting increasingly odd that that's our name because so much of our work is in the South Bay now, and it keeps going further south. But that is our mission, and our vision is to create a network of protected lands where people and nature connect and thrive. Um, and a lot of intersectionality, a lot of holistic thinking at Post between these different community needs, like on the most basic level, clean air and water, access to nature, and then, flood control, fire resilience, and then, you know, uh, down the list, wildlife, um, uh, groundwater recharge habitat, um, working lands, agriculture, all these things connect, and it's a very complex puzzle of all these lands and how we reconcile all these needs. And we acknowledge that the area is growing too. There is development occurring. We don't want to position ourselves as, you know, not acknowledging that fact that the area continues to grow, but what we're trying to do is maintain our urban, you know, our green buffer zone around the urban areas, protect our clean air and water and all that. So we were founded in 1977, actually by some of the same people who founded Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District, which is a public agency, taxpayer funded. And since 1977, we've protected 97,000 acres of land. I'll let this play again because all of these blue properties are properties that Post protected over the years. So you could see it kind of growing and growing over the years. And really what happened is that after some folks founded MidPen, they realized that there are property owners who don't want to work with a government agency. Sometimes our state parks and our county parks and regional districts like MidPen and OSA are sometimes successful in negotiating land transactions themselves. They do that, but other times the property has been listed and the owners want to sell it and it's all happening really fast. There's a desire for it to happen in a confidential manner. And that's why Post exists, is to be sort of like a broker for conservation, buying property as soon as we can, once it's listed, and holding it in trust. 97,000 acres we protected. I don't know the exact number that we've transferred at this point. It's up there in maybe 70,000 um, acres have been transferred to different entities over the years. And I'll get into that a little bit in a second here. So I'm going to share a little bit about our framework, kind of how we think about our goals at a high level. Um, and all these projects fit into these goals in different ways, in different combinations. So our strategic plan is focused on preserving biodiversity, building climate resilience, and creating equitable access. So biodiversity, habitat protection, wildlife linkages, building climate resilience, a lot of work around working lands, agriculture, our working forests, forest health and forest resilience, wildfire risk mitigation, and creating equitable access for all. That's kind of the bread and butter, is creating public access for people. And I'm going to pause here and just highlight that there's a big theme right now in conservation, which is preserving habitat and biodiversity, and protected blocks of, habitat versus public access. Kind of tricky because we want to access all these lands and have trails everywhere. And of course, we're working towards that. But then we realize more and more about the impacts of human um, you know, uh, usage of properties. And that's really a big theme in our area and across the country right now, is trying to balance those things. So there's a lot of balancing. That's a theme. Um, so kind of getting down on a different level in terms of our goals, we kind of have these four buckets that are our primary program areas. So this includes farmland, public access, redwoods, and wildlife linkages. And I'm going to kind of go through them in some kind of order here. I'm going to touch on all these to some extent. So how does post work? Um, this is the basic blueprint of how we work. We identify and prioritize potential properties for acquisition. Um, we protect those properties. There's a few different ways that we do that. Um, and then we're generally seeking to transfer those lands to the appropriate partner. This is often public agencies, but there are cases where we transfer land to a private owner, to another nonprofit. Um, and so that's generally still kind of our operating principles. We don't want to hold on to land indefinitely. We want to find the appropriate long-term steward of the land. And going into this a little bit more deeply, this number is probably bigger in terms of the number of transactions, but on our most recent updated project map, this map with all these orange dots, there's about 126 individual properties. Some of them are a collection of smaller properties that were part of a larger transaction. Um, it's pretty amazing. 126 transactions over almost 50 years. You do the math on that. It's a lot of transactions each year, for an organization. Some of them large, and they may be fee title acquisition, buying the land outright. But we also rely on this mechanism, this tool called a conservation easement, where we essentially retain the rights, um, certain types of rights on a property, while the property is owned by another entity, whether it's a private owner or a public agency. We use conservation easements quite a bit. Uh, and there's some different types. There's affirmative agricultural easements that require agriculture continue. We have some creative, forestry related easements in the redwood forest, more general conservation easements. And we have a GIS team, a mapping team, and we look at all of our different strategic pillars: equitable access, biodiversity, our program areas, farmland, redwoods, public access, wildlife. And we kind of superimpose on this map layers of information that, collectively add up to a score for individual areas and properties. And we use that as our conservation prioritization framework, trying to make sense of this really complex real estate kind of landscape, and where are we going to apply our donor funding to the greatest benefit to hit on our various goals. So we use tools to kind of hone in on where's going to be the highest best use of this this funding that we have. Um, and then we go out and pursue land deals.
So, Mark, I've got a
Yeah.
question, and I'm not sure if you're going to be familiar with that project specifically, but were some of those agricultural easements that you mentioned used in the protection of the Coyote Valley? I know our
Oh,
organization's had a long history with advocating for its protection, and there's
yeah.
been a number of land acquisitions there.
Oh, yeah. I cannot tell you whether that agricultural use and requiring it is a part of the easements um that have been created or are being created in Coyote Valley as we partner with the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority. The most common place that we have used affirmative agricultural easements is on the San Mateo coast, which was a big focus of our agricultural work for many years. And as time goes on, we're thinking more and more about working lands in the Santa Clara County and San Benito County and applying some of those lessons from San Mateo County down there. But the affirmative agricultural easements I know of are mostly in San Mateo County. And it gets a little bit convoluted, but in San Mateo County, there's been cases where we buy a property and then we create a conservation easement on that property and sell the property back to a private landowner that intends to farm it. And what that does is it ensures that the property stays, for one, at agricultural value versus speculative, development value.
Yeah.
So that creates a situation where somebody seeking to farm the property actually has the possibility of buying it at
Mhm.
agricultural value. And that's enabled some longtime farming families to actually purchase land, sometimes for the first time,
Oh, that's
from Post.
fantastic.
Yeah, and we retain the agricultural conservation easement though. So
Yeah.
that means that we're monitoring that property, ensuring that agriculture continues there and some conservation values continue there, like protecting creeks. I'm going to actually go into that a little bit, but I can't really answer whether agricultural usage has been required in any sort of way on any easements in Coyote Valley, but it's a big consideration of balancing agriculture, wildlife, public access down there for sure. And that's, something that OSA is working on balancing, in partnership with Post. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So, obviously, partners make it possible. We love all of our nonprofit partners like you all, but this slide is just showing that, since our inception, we've primarily partnered with these public agencies in our area, Mid-Penn County, San Mateo County Parks, Santa Clara County Parks, Open Space Authority, California State Parks, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Um, and now I'm just gonna run through some bread and butter type examples of what Post does in terms of public access and creating parks that people could visit. So I I neglected to mention on the previous slide that in addition to just land acquisition, we do a lot of regional planning with collections of partners. And one of the areas that we do this around is public access and regional trails. So these maps here are showing two regional trails that we work to support. One is this grand vision of a Bay to Sea trail from East Palo Alto to the coast, um, that we're working on with 10 plus municipalities and public agencies. Another is this map on the bottom right, which is the California Coastal Trail Development. We also partner with the Bay Area Ridge Trail and several other regional trails. So on a basic level, we're trying to connect the dots for some of these trails and fill in the gaps between protected lands along the proposed route of these trails. So some basic examples. Windy Hill. You guys probably know Windy Hill. Uh, the majority of this property was first protected by Post in 1981. And now it is operated by Mid-Penn. So yeah, we received a gift of 537 acres from a development company in 1979. We transferred it to Mid-Penn in 1981. This was slated for development. And you know, the community around Portola Valley decided they didn't think that was appropriate. The owner of the property was like, well, what do we do now? they decided to work with Post and transfer it, get it into our hands, and then we transferred it to Midpen. And we sold some of the land, and this is a common thing. We do sell property to the public agencies where public dollars are allocated for new land acquisition. It varies wildly whether we're getting half the value that we paid or if it's an outright donation from Post to this public agency. We do recoup some costs that way sometimes. Um, and so since then, there was several other transactions that occurred, some of which Post was involved in, others not, that has kind of expanded the Windy Hill Preserve over the 80s, um, and even into the 90s. So classic example, that's where we started. It was our first property acquisition right there on the peninsula.
Very nice. We do have a question about the Windy Hill. Was that land turnover part of a mitigation plan?
Shoot, was it part of a mitigation plan? I don't think so. I do not think so. One thing about mitigation, Post doesn't really deal in mitigation generally. There's we do partner with orgs that uh mitigation is a big part of what they do, like the Santa Clara Valley Habitat Agency. They do a
Hmm.
lot of mitigation.
Yeah.
But I don't believe mitigation was a part of these transactions. I don't have any notes about that. There was a lot of individual property acquisitions, buying them or having property donated by PG&E or uh or donated to us by different entities. So as a rule, it's been a policy for Post that we don't really deal in mitigation transactions. I can't really name why. I think it's more just wanting to be fairly separated from any type of development activity.
Yeah,
So,
that makes sense. If folks are looking for kind of a local example of mitigation property turned habitat,
mhm,
um, all that open grass field out in El Viso still, that's why it hasn't been built on, is that is mitigation land that has been
mhm,
set aside for wildlife habitat.
mhm.
Sometimes mitigation habitat can work, sometimes it's not so successful. But yeah, I can understand an organization not wanting to get involved with all the complexities of that.
Yeah, I'm reminded of that. I hadn't thought about that for a while, but it's been kind of a long-standing policy. That said, we're very close partners with the Santa Clara Valley Habitat Agency, that's
Mhm.
their core function to an extent, is facilitating mitigation, which is great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, another example is Tunitas Creek Beach. Very straightforward again. We bought 58 acres in 2017. I forget how many millions of dollars this was. I was just telling Carolyn, I can't remember all the acreage and the numbers of millions of dollars. They go on and on every year. There's just these amazing transactions that we're doing. So
I don't think I want to think about how many zeros were involved with a land acquisition on that stretch of the coast.
yeah, yeah. So 10 plus million, I believe. I cannot recall. But we purchased this property in 2017. In 2020, we transferred it to San Mateo County Parks. Um, and since then, County Parks has led a community input process that resulted in a really nice plan that balances, public beach access with protecting snowy plover habitat, mitigating erosion, balancing all these needs. And this new public beach is about to open soon. Not going to say more, but I believe the opening is coming pretty soon. So another classic example of, Post was able to buy the property. We tried not to talk about this at first because we try to keep transactions confidential, but then somebody did a bunch of research and found out that we actually bought the property from Chris Isaac, the singer. Um, and so that's cool.
Oh,
But there you go. Another example of Post buying a property, transferring it to the appropriate public agency, creating public access. And then another example we were just talking about as the event started here was, I can't believe how long I've spoken already. Oh my gosh, is Bear Creek Redwoods, which is right above Los Gatos. Long history there. In 1980, it was owned actually by a large part of it was owned by the Jesuit community. And
yeah,
they
there's
decided,
still some old buildings from them up there.
yeah, yeah. And then in the late 80s, they decided that they wanted to sell the property. Some developers bought the land. They had a proposal for luxury homes, golf courses, country club. Um, in 1996, the county decided with preservation, rejected a proposal there. 1998, Post and Midpen agreed to buy the land for 25 million, but needed more funds. We did a whole fundraising campaign. Uh, we over the next few years we acquired 1,500 acres. Um, and then we eventually acquired land, but then to open it up, there was a big barriers. It was a massive undertaking to deal with old roads, hazardous kind of old roads, dilapidated buildings, invasive species, lack of parking. So it was very prohibitively expensive. And then in 2014, Measure Double A passed that provided mid-pen funding, and then they baked opening up Bear Creek Redwoods into their plan. So this was an example of where Post helped to protect the property, but then it remained closed to the public for many years before finally becoming a public preserve. And often people ask, like, hey, why you protected this property? Why is it not open yet? There's a lot of reasons, usually funding, and then planning, because you want to avoid archaeological sites, sensitive habitat, create safe environment for people, um, and all that. So, last example before I transition here to some other topics, I'm just providing you some basic examples of how we work. Rancho San Vicente, this is an addition to Calero County Park. In 1998, um, this property consisted of 966 acres owned by a developer again. And they kept trying to push through some development plans. The county and community members were rejecting these plans. And in 2009, Post purchased the property for $16 million, all in coordination with county parks, because this is just when there's a property like this right up against an existing county park, we'll always immediately start a conversation with the appropriate public agency partner. Hey, this opportunity is coming up. Are you guys interested in this property eventually? And so um, we bought it. And then it was opened up in 2018. So that was another 9-year layover of kind of planning and all that before it was opened up. So there you go. Bunch of examples, just very clean, clear examples, acquisition, transfer. And actually right here, I want to pause and remind, just kind of acknowledge that how do we get these properties? There's many layers. There's the community advocacy that comes before Post. And that's where you guys come in and other organizations, people community advocates weigh in on plans at the county level, city level, regional level, and kind of are helping to make decisions about where development should go or should not go. And this is not something that Post really engages in. That's the role of other organizations. That comes before us, but that creates the path for property acquisition sometimes. Um, and so congratulations to you all and to orgs like Green Foothills and other orgs for that great advocacy that occurs. And then people vote, and then there's also people who donate. So we always try to remind people of the people's history of conservation. These places didn't happen by accident. There's a lot of layers.
Mhm.
So yeah.
We do have a question. How does Post ensure that the government bodies that use the land, that end up kind of in charge of the land after
Yeah.
Post turns it over, how do you ensure that that land is then being used as Post intended? Is that
Yeah.
through easements or other legal mechanisms?
Yeah, I've been asked this question very consistently lately, and it probably reflects on the atmosphere in the greater world of uncertainty and anxiety and whatnot. So, it's a question that makes sense. And for one, I think we're in a place where we're really lucky. There's a lot of community will for what we do and for these public parks. And so people vote consistently in favor of conservation. And that's our greatest protection, I think. This is kind of taking my post hat off a little bit and just commenting on, in order to sustain these protected lands, there needs to continue to be community will. And that kind of defines what happens at the government level, But aside from that, post generally, when we're transferring properties, we're retaining conservation easements on the properties. And um, that's generally the case now. I think in our earlier years, it wasn't always the case, but now it's generally the case where we retain a conservation easement, outlining that the property is to be used for conservation, for habitat, for X, Y, and Z, for public benefit. We retain that right. And in our financial planning, we have long-term funds that we've set up to ensure that we could fulfill our commitments for stewardship and for monitoring the easements that we own. So there's annual monitoring that we do. We're also part of the Land Trust Alliance, which is a national um, organization of land trusts, and all the land trusts across the country, hundreds of them, pay into a program called Terra Firma, which is a massive legal fund set up to fight any challenges to our conservation easements. So we feel secure, that we got durable protection into the future here. But I do like to pause and remind people that, you know, um, we have to get people out into the land to appreciate these places, to understand their value, and to continue to maintain the political will to um to advocate for them and support them and all that. So
Yeah, I think that's a
yeah,
great point.
yeah. Okay, so often people ask, what do we do when we own the land? There are years and years, decades sometimes that Post owns a big property. And that's sometimes because there's no appropriate takeout partner to take over the property. There's a big ranch on the coast that you guys probably know, Cloverdale Coastal Ranches, that is
Mhm.
now owned by Midpen. We transferred that property into Midpen, but we own that, I think, over a decade. And there was nobody who could take on that giant property for many years. It was kind of in a no man's zone. State parks couldn't do it. County parks, San Mateo County parks couldn't. So there's cases where we own land for quite a while. And what do we do while we own the land? We do stewardship. We have our volunteers who go out and manage invasive plants. Sometimes we build infrastructure like wells, fences, roads, lot of erosion management on roads, That's one of the first things that we often do is like, okay, is there big erosion problems? Is there pollution, contamination around an old barn, lead contamination? There's one property where somebody had a gun range there, so there
Ooh.
was a lot of lead cam contamination. So clean that up. We try to take care of like the biggest chunks, lowest hanging fruit sort of actions to put the property in good shape, make it safe, kind of reduce the burden for the public agencies once they take it on, if possible. In the case of farmland, there's a lot of work that we do around farmland infrastructure. Um, so just pausing to kind of explain, there's a lot going on while we own land. Our objective is not to own land indefinitely, but in certain cases, we own land for a long period and try to, and we take care of it. I want to just briefly touch on farmland protection and how it works. This is a view of San Gregorio Farm or Blue House Farm right on 84 as you come out to Pescadero. Beautiful property. Um, and a great success story. We actually um not long ago sold the property to Ryan Casey, the owner of Blue House Farm, with a conservation easement in place. This is an example of how through various mechanisms we've enabled a young farmer to now own land and while maintaining permanent protection on the property. So this is a visual of how a conservation easement works and the affirmative agricultural conservation easement on this property, kind of outlining um, how the property is to be used. So in orange, you see the area that we've designated as agricultural working land where farming can occur. In the yellow portion, that is kind of the farm complex, like the I forget the name for it, but it's the farm complex with all the outbuildings and stuff, and that's where
Hmm.
development of buildings is allowed. It's restricted to that footprint. We've actually done a lot of work around farm labor housing. Huge topic. If you want farms here, what do you need? You need housing for the
Yeah.
laborers and farmers. So we've developed, I think, dozens of farm labor housing units in the San Mateo coast. Our work in the Santa Clara County is nascent. It's early. So some of these lessons will be probably applied over time, Santa Clara County, but in the blue or along the creek here, this is a riparian buffer zone where, activity is restricted to a large extent to protect the creek. And then the green area is fully, protected riparian zone. Nothing can occur here. This is all outlined in the easement. This pond here is a pond that we developed. It's part of the infrastructure that we developed to draw water from the creek in the winter months, store it for farm use, and reduce the burden on the creek in the summer, so as not to impact the fish and to restore the fish. So, balancing agriculture and habitat, big topic. Let me move over. I'm gonna kind of I can't believe the time. Uh, Let me move over to Redwood Forest. This is a huge area of our work, and we own a 9,000 plus acre property above Davenport called San Vicente Redwoods. We're doing active management there, including tree thinning. This is just showing the foresters thinning out some trees in an area. We create shaded fuel breaks in the forest to kind of, it's not a full fuel break like a bare ground, but it's a shaded fuel break. And we've been doing a lot of work to thin the forest and have controlled burns to reduce catastrophic wildfire risk. Here you've got trees on the right where we did tree thinning and controlled burning, and trees on the left that had no treatment and burned in the CZU fire. Here's another view of that. Here on do you see my cursor moving around?
Yes.
Yeah. So over here is a shaded fuel break where we did treatment, restoring some controlled burns, prescribed burns to the land. This is an area that was untreated and burned to the ground, and we have the privilege of working with the Amamutsun tribe on a lot of work in San Vicente redwoods to steward the forest. So this is another example of working lands and stewardship and management of properties that Post owns. So now getting over to I covered public access really quickly, farmland and redwood forest. Now, obviously, this group for sure cares about wildlife. It's a huge
We're
area.
easy like that.
You're easy like that, yeah. And that's a huge area of our work. Some of you guys probably remember this famous video of the badger and the coyote hanging out in a culvert in the South Bay that was captured, went mega viral.
Yep.
Um, yeah, and this is an example of the work that we fund across our entire working area of like wildlife monitoring, wildlife research, understanding where wildlife are moving, and how we can improve wildlife connectivity across existing protected habitats by protecting land, restoring land, creating new types of infrastructure and crossings for animals to cross along the landscape. I'm just kind of pausing here because I'm waiting for this coyote to do exactly that.
Yep.
Come on, Badger. Come along. Can't believe we caught that. Um, so lots of camera trapping that we do. Um, Wildlife protection, such a big topic. We are uh, working in the redwood forests on the coast, further in the South Bay, we're working on ponds in the San Francisco garter snake and red-legged frog. We're working in the redwood forests around certain bird species and protecting Bear Island for wetland kind of bird species and other species. And it goes on, but I just want to focus a little bit on Coyote Valley, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. Um, this is a map, kind of just showing uh, the location. Again, I'm kind of just realizing that you guys are super duper community members probably that know this pretty well. This is kind of just highlighting we've done various wildlife research projects, including all these camera traps along culverts, up and down many roads. This includes Pacheco Pass now and um, 129 going from like San Juan Bautista to Watsonville. Obviously, in Coyote Valley, along all the roads here, we did a bobcat telemetry a collaring study with various tracks to kind of understand where wildlife is moving across Coyote Valley. And we're really proud to say that at this point, we've protected 1,600 acres on the valley floor, tens of thousands of acres collectively across all the organizations headed up into the west towards Calero and whatnot. So it's just amazing we've gotten to the point that we're at where we're actually planning for improved wildlife corridors across Coyote Valley. But we have a triple barrier problem of 101 Monterey Road and Santa Teresa Road down here. And so we are working closely with Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority, which is managing the Coyote Valley Conservation Area Master Plan process. Post is kind of the lead on the wildlife linkages part of that. And we're trying to address how do we get animals across this road. And every year there's another little puzzle piece being added to the protected lands. Just recently, Post protected this property just a few weeks, I think, ago, maybe in the last month or two. So this is the first property that we've helped to buy on the east side of Monterey Road. So now all these dark green properties have been protected. Now we've got a little chunk right here. It's all adding up to being able to create a really significant wildlife crossing features in this northern section of Coyote Valley. We've raised millions of dollars at this point. The planning continues. There's these conceptual designs that are being reviewed with OSA and with other partners like Caltrans and Union Pacific and VTA, trying to assess, what is necessary to build, how can we build it, what's cost effective, tens of millions of dollars. You guys know the Wallace Annenberg crossing is going to be opening soon in LA.
Yes.
Yeah, big project. That was, I think, over $100 million. I don't know how
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
So, this is not as extensive as that, what we're planning, but still tens of millions of dollars in
Yeah.
many years. Going into the next decade from now. And I'm coming up close here. We took some questions, but I'm coming to the end of the slides here. The work continues. Coyote Valley has been a focus area for us for many years and for many other organizations before us. You guys played a huge role in Coyote Valley protection over the years, through advocacy. So that's great. We're underway there, but look at this landscape. We've got other places. We got to connect these lands to one another. Here's the Santa Cruz Mountains coming out to the Gavilan Range. Here's Pacheco Pass over here. Um, this is the Upper Pajaro River Valley, which still offers some connectivity um, for wildlife to cross. Um, if I'm not I won't go there, but there is wildlife movement that goes through these areas. So Post is now increasingly thinking about southern linkages from Santa Cruz to the Gavilan Range, over to the Diablo Range, south of Coyote Valley, and dreaming even bigger, thanks to our supporter community, we're able to start thinking, hey, maybe we could have an impact in northern San Benito County and near San Juan Bautista and other areas. So just going to end with a few recent examples. Mead Ranch, I think you see, I think this is El Toro over here. Um this is west of Coyote Valley, another big ranch purchased almost 2,000 acres for $24 million in March of this year. And Eurostock, aka Sergeant Ranch, um, but we refer to it mostly by the Mutsun name for the property now, which is Eurostock, the place of the big head, very sacred landscape for the Ama Mutsun and other native people in the South Bay. Um, Huge
That's an
success.
absolutely fascinating property. They've got tar flows there.
It
Uh,
It is. Had the privilege of going over to see that property with the tar seeps and tar pits. It's like La Brea tar pits,
awesome.
practically. Um, and what a success of the collective community
Yeah.
that we've advocated to protect this property, and there's a conservation outcome. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
That that property's fate was in question. I mean, it's been in question for
for
decades.
decades.
So like just an idea of how long-term some of these projects can be, like that when they announced the sale of that property, like there were tears in the audience because there were quite a few people that just thought they were never going to see the end results of all of their years of work for that. So
I know. And you know what? Like, I'm being very sincere. Like, I'm so grateful to all the people listening here and all the people out there in the community. Like, there's a lot of things that I didn't think was going to happen even in my lifetime. Coyote Valley. as a young college student, I just thought it was gone. It was going to be all developed. And this is another example like that, where it's a miracle, and we've purchased over 6,000 acres. This is one of the largest transactions that Post has ever done. You know, multiple separate transactions, 1,300 acres for 15 million, 2,500 acres for 25 million, another 2,200 acres for 23 million over the last couple of years since 2004 to this um, early this year. So that has been incredible. And lastly, I want to just mention, this is like a sign of work to come. Several properties on the border of San Benito and Santa Clara County, headed towards Hollister, kind of closer over to the Pacheco Pass area versus, the west side. Several properties, agricultural properties that we purchased here. Looking now, what kind of restoration is possible for wetlands, seasonal wetlands, um, and all that into the future. Very early planning and a lot of reconciling to do is around agriculture versus restored habitats and all that. But a sign of what's to come. So we're at time almost. I just want to say, you could, I appreciate all of you for donating to the Bird Alliance and volunteering with the Bird Alliance. And, if you want to get involved with posts, you can too. But thank you for all you do as part of the Bird Alliance. You could check out our events. Actually, Carolyn, we're trading presentations right now. So Carolyn's
Mhm.
going to do a beginner-friendly birding webinar next week. It's probably kind of entry level compared to what you all know, but going to be excellent. I'm so excited to listen to Carolyn. Um, and we have that next week. You could join us. You could follow us on social media. And I used up all the time. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's quite all right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I've learned a lot about what Post does. Does anybody in our audience have any last minute questions before we say goodnight for the evening?
Happy to take a few. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry for talking at you like I was on a rampage.
You had a lot of great things to talk about.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it looks like we are quiet in the chat. So, everyone,
Okay.
thank you so much for joining us this evening. Mark, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. Um, as Mark mentioned, if you're interested in more post-related activities, next week they are going to be hosting a webinar all about birds of the forest. But they've also got a ton of really fun events on their calendar. I'm going to just drop a link to their event calendar in the chat for y'all. Bird walks, nature journaling, all sorts of activities in these amazing open spaces that Post helps protect. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening and being part of the community. Have a wonderful night. All right.
Thank you for having me, Carolyn, and thank you all for everything you do with the Santa Clara Valley Bird Alliance. You guys are awesome. I'm a super fan.
Alrighty. Have a
Okay.
good night, everybody.